At this time, I'd like to bring up our national chaplain, Brother Dave Lipinski, to give us an invocation and assist us in leading the Creed of Phi Kappa Tau. Brother Lipinski, thank you.
There are many reasons why we have national conventions. Two of the most important are to renew those bonds of fellowship, sometimes for the first time and sometimes for people we've known for many years. The second reason we gather together is to make decisions. Decisions are what is in the best interest of our brotherhood. As we make those decisions, you have to remember two things very importantly. Number one, when you vote or make a decision, it's for the best interest of the brotherhood. Maybe not you, maybe not your chapter, but for the brotherhood as a common group. And the secondly is after the decisions are made, we're still a brotherhood. You walk out that door, you walk out as one fraternity, not a bunch of chapters. So remember that well, and don't let rancor affect our brotherhood. With that in mind, let us rise for the creed. Phi Kappa Tau,
by an union membership, has conferred upon me an art of distinction which I take just pride. I believe in the spirit of brotherhood for which it stands. I shall strive to attain its ideals and positively bring to an honor and credit. I shall be loyal to the college and the chapter, and shall be strong in ties to them that I may retain the spirit of youth. I shall be a good and fellow citizens. I shall try always to discharge the obligations of others, rising to that and I am fraternity and
Next, we're going to have the roll call of delegates, but you'll be more than happy to know that we're not going to do an actual roll call. We will do a clicker check-in unless we have a motion to do the 2-hour roll call. No? Okay. All right. Who is opening this? Is Logan? Staff? Thank you.
All right, the roll call vote is up. You'll click number 1 for undergraduate delegate, number 2 for graduate delegate, number 3 if you're a past national president, and number 4 for national council. And I'll open it up here just in a moment.
Thank you.
It is open, actually. Barry, just let me know when you want us to close the vote.
All right, we're going to let them all, every category vote at the same time? All right. Let's vote. Everybody vote. Everybody vote. Clerk, like a machine, record the vote. Yes. Okay. We'll bring it up. We'll let Sasha come up. See if it matches. Sasha, will you give our credentials report and let's see if our votes match?
Sure. Sasha Knepsky, Epsilon Kappa, Rutgers University. So we've issued one more coming. It'll be 45 undergraduate delegates, 56 graduate delegates for a total of 101. 5 past national presidents, 5 national counselors for a total of 111. We need 57 for quorum and 67 for constitutional amendments. John, good math? Thank you.
Give us again the total and the majority is, and also what the number is for passage of constitutional amendments.
Yeah, so we've issued a total of 111 clickers, 112 with one more coming just now. So that it should be a little bit more. But it's people present in the room that are voting, so we will go by that number. It'll be 57 for quorum and 67 for constitutional amendments after this roll call vote.
Is that 6-7 for constitutional amendments under the present number?
Correct. Past national presidents and national council cannot vote.
That's correct. Again, for those of you who don't know, past national presidents and national councilors cannot vote on the constitutional amendment. All right. Logan, let's do this again. Click a vote. Let's see where our count is. Let's just open it up. All right, we're ready? Okay. It's all right. So just while we're waiting, we're going to have the change of agenda approval, which includes what will be next, will be the Kappa Housing Task Force. Following that will be the officer report, Olane Holdings. Following that will be the Phi Kappa Foundation. Following that will be the Domain Director's report, Scholarship report, and Rituals report, and Delegates request. So that's what's on deck, and we'll put that up here in a minute. All right, are we ready to open? All right. Please follow the screen and let's check the clickers accordingly. Vote. Everybody voted? Got about 19. All right,
Been trying to avoid running into this thing.
clerk will light the machine and record the vote. All right, we have 97, which is much more than a quorum. Looks like still about 11, 12 not voting. All right, let's move on. Next, we're going to have the change of agenda approval. Will you bring that up on the screen, please? This reflects some of the voting that we had yesterday, as you may recall. So we're going to report of officers, report of committees, resolutions, new business, elections. So after we approve this vote, we'll have first on deck, officers report Kappa Housing Task Force. Next will be officers report Olane Holdings. Next will be officers report Phi Kappa Foundation. After that, officers report Domain Directors. Following that will be officers report Scholarship report. And following that will be committee report, the Ritual report. And following that will be committee report, Delegates request. So now I'll entertain a motion to change the agenda. Change the order of the day. Recognize the gentleman.
JJ Lewis, Gamma Lambda, Central Michigan, go fire up chips. I would move the order of proceedings for today as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
State your name and chapter.
I, Connor Filipovich from the Epsilon chapter of Mount Union, second the motion.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to change the order of the day. Is there any discussion? No debate. All those for, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. First up is our officer report from National Counselor Michael French. You want to go to that, Mike? I'm not sure.
Chairman, just a quick update for the Credentials Committee. We had an additional graduate council representative credential just now, receiving a clicker. So now we have 57 graduate delegates, which will increase our quorum to 58.
Raises the quorum, the minimum.
51% plus 1 to 58.
Okay, 258.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Which one? I normally don't like that position reserved for CEO. We can't. Okay. All right. Normally, the only people that permit on the dais are the CEO and the presiding officer, but for this, we're going to allow Michael French to come up and present the Kappa Housing Task Force. And Warren Maddox.
I would like to preface this, I know this is a difficult topic, but I would ask that everybody holds their question and comments until the report has been entered in its entirety. This is a report of the Kappa Joint Task Force to the Phi Kappa Tau Foundation and to the National Council of Phi Kappa Tau. This report has already been entered into our minutes as National Council and as the Foundation. The Kappa Joint Task Force was formed in February of 2023 with members of the National Council, Foundation trustees, and executive office staff to investigate the nature and details surrounding the sources of funding extended to the Kappa Housing Corporation for the construction of the new Kappa House. Throughout the course of construction, the lending institutions required equity to be injected into the project to maintain funding levels. An amount of $2.3 million was extended to the Kappa Housing Corporation from the foundation and donors, the Fraternity Housing Fund, and Old Main Holdings. Kappa House Corporation also provided $350,000 in funding, which represents the proceeds from the sale of their former chapter house. To finalize the mortgage loan from Stockyard Bank, the foundation provided a guarantee of on a $3.2 million loan from the bank to the Kappa Housing Corporation. We will outline that the task force key recommendations included securing the necessary legal documentation to collateralize our funding, to protect our assets and strengthen our financial position, realign the loan obligations to the appropriate entities, place limits on the fraternity CEO and foundation executive director to provide better accountability. We also would recommend a restructuring of the Old Main Holdings to increase accountability and better serve the fraternity. The outcomes secured by the task force and the implementation of these recommendations aim to assure our brotherhood that all future transactions will undergo thorough review and authorization before being carried out.
Kappa housing project began in 2018 with the offer of a significant donation to improve the experience of our chapter at the University of Kentucky by building a new chapter house. Funding for the project came from donors, the Kappa Housing Corporation, the Foundation, the fraternity, Old Main Holdings, and Stockyard Bank. At the Foundation's meeting in October of 2022, the trustees had extensive discussions regarding its funding of the Kappa project and determined that a task force was needed to include members of the National Council to investigate the specific parameters of its funding. In addition to the potential repayment, documentation, and potential financing responsibilities of the foundation, as well as the fraternity. Now, let me speak to the task force. The task force members were chosen to provide professional expertise, knowledge, and timing of the transactions involved in governance. Mike Bickamer, Foundation trustee, is a retired financial executive. Doug Adams, Foundation trustee, is a commercial banker. Michael French, on stage with me, is National Counselor of the Finance and Audit Committee. Sam Medley, as you know, is the interim fraternity CEO. Travis Robinson was at that time Foundation interim executive director. Throughout the course of our investigation, members of the task force spent many hours reviewing documents, interviewing involved parties, and meeting to determine the best course of action. The task force has reviewed the general ledger entries of the foundation and fraternity and cross-referenced the transactions with the external audits from fiscal year 19 through fiscal year 21. The additional parties to the transaction included Kappa Housing Corporation and Old Main Holdings, who both cooperated well with this investigation. The executive office staff were also very responsive in providing the details as requested. The task force engaged the law firm of Mimi, Hogue, and Epperson, PLLP, in the preparation and execution of the required documents to memorialize the transactions. The task force obtained a title search of the Kappa House property, also done by our legal counsel.
Took one copy too. As part of the initial funding, the Kappa Housing Corporation secured a $3.2 million construction long-term mortgage from Stockyard Bank. The foundation is serving as guarantors on that loan from Stockyard Bank to the Kappa Housing Corporation. In the event of default by Kappa, the foundation may be required by the bank to continue making the monthly payments on the loan or pay off the remaining balance of the loan as part of its guarantee. This is a contingent liability for the foundation. Funds were advanced from the foundation and fraternity to support the overall funding of the project, with donations from the lead donor and other donors providing partial repayment of the funds that were extended by the foundation and the fraternity. Funding from Old Main Holdings was also extended and was to be long-term financing for the project, consistent with Old Main's past fundings of other chapters. The figures below represent the aggregated amounts of originally extended to the Kappa Housing Corporation by each organization. The foundation, a little above 1.2 million. The fraternity, $600,000 through a loan to the foundation. Fraternity housing funds, $450,000, and Old Main Holding for $335,000.
After having a title search conducted by legal counsel, it was determined that only the bank had filed a mortgage on the property, and no liens are in place to perfect the fraternity and the foundation and Old Main Holdings fundings. Further, all these organizations were uncollateralized on the funds that had been extended to Kappa, which left all of the organizations open to a potential loss on their investments. Additionally, no loan documents were found between the various entities. Therefore, our objective became properly documenting all the loans and securing and executing a secondary mortgage position to protect our interests. It's important that we understand some subsequent events. In February of 2023, the chapter began facing disciplinary sanctions from the university, which increased the risk to our organization given our financial commitment. Sam Medley, interim CEO of the fraternity, and Travis Robinson, interim executive director of the foundation, worked with the University of Kentucky officials, with the Kappa Housing Corporation, and with the significant donor and chapter members to mitigate the sanctions against the chapter. The university decided to suspend the chapter, but permitted them to still live in the chapter house, which helped mitigate our potential negative financial impact into all the various entities.
The task force has diligently worked with legal counsel to secure and execute the necessary legal documents from all parties involved to protect our assets and realign the loan obligations to the appropriate entities. The foundation board has approved and made a partial repayment of its $600,000 loan to the fraternity based upon a pro rata share of the donations received, reducing the balance that the foundation owed the fraternity to $312,000. Based upon the actions of the National Council, Old Main Holdings agreed to further loan $312,000 to the Kappa Housing Corporation, which will then be paid to the foundation as a partial repayment of funds that they extended. The foundation will then transfer $312,000 to the fraternity to pay off its loan to the fraternity. The net effect of the new loans and transactions is to properly align the existing and ongoing obligations to the correct entity. All respective loan documents and agreements are in the process of being signed by each entity, and then the liens will be recorded by our legal counsel. Upon final signatures, the remaining balances of the obligations due from the Kappa Housing Corporation to each entity are as follows. The foundation, $547,000. The fraternity from the Fraternity Housing Fund, $234,000. And Old Main Holdings, $647,000.
I'll continue along with the recommendations. The foundation will continue to attempt to collect the outstanding donations pledged to the Kappa project. As these donations are received, they will be used to repay balances owed to the foundation and to the fraternity. Old Main Holdings will be repaid with regular payments by the Kappa Housing Corporation over an amortized amount of 25 years. The foundation is securing bank loan guarantee by entering into an agreement with Kappa Housing Corporation to transfer ownership of the house to the foundation upon an event of default on the bank loan. The National Council has placed limits on the CEO to provide better controls. We further recommend a restructuring of Old Main Holdings to increase accountability and better serve our fraternity.
In conclusion, the Kappa Joint Task Force is nearing completion of the mission set out by the Foundation Board and the National Council. We have performed the due diligence required of a complex real estate transaction. The findings exposed serious financial risks to the overall organization and gaps in the accounting policies and procedures of the related parties. The key recommendations are securing a secondary mortgage position for the fraternity, the foundation, and Old Main Holdings, restructuring the outstanding financial obligations to align with the appropriate entities, and increase controls by both boards on their corresponding executives. The entirety of the recommendation serves to provide our brotherhood with the assurance that any future transactions will be held to the proper review and authorization standards prior to engaging in said transactions. Lastly, the task force would like to extend Sam Medley our deepest gratitude for his work with the major donor and the University of Kentucky in the successful effort of negotiating appropriate disciplinary sanctions for the Kappa chapter. His efforts have provided a substantial basis to begin to mitigate the financial risk to the whole organization. Thank you. That concludes our report.
Thank you, Brother French and Brother Maddox. If y'all will return to the floor if we have any inquiries.
Y'all might want to stay on stage for a second.
No, they're going to speak from the floor. Is there any questions or comments? State your name, sir.
Bill Crane, Beta Z chapter of the University of Georgia. First, I'd like to thank Brother French for heading the task force and the work they did going through some very irregular paperwork and documentation of these transactions. But since most of the undergraduates on the floor were not familiar, and if you'll give me a little leeway on point of inquiry, I'd like to fill in some spots. And if I'm incorrect, please, Michael or Warren, correct me. But the $600,000 loan from the fraternity to the foundation came from, correct me if I'm wrong, our insurance reserves that are premiums paid for liability insurance claims, correct?
I cannot substantiate that claim. I cannot substantiate that claim.
Then what would be the source of the $600,000 in cash?
Brother Crane, we had to look at the entirety of the picture. The given sources from within each of the account lines was not at the detail that we were doing. It happened in the cross-reference, but I cannot exactly say that this dollar came from this account. This is why we provided aggregated amounts.
I'm not faulting you. I'm just trying to understand and help them understand. We are a modest $2.5 million cash flow a year organization, fraternity and foundation combined. So for $600,000 to be lying around for the fraternity to loan the foundation and the foundation then to grant to Kappa, and the total amount, $2.3 million for one chapter house. I'm just trying to get context on selection and how we got to a point. It's a grand house. I don't blame Kappa. I was involved in the recolonization of Kappa. I'm trying to understand what the genesis of giving $2.3 million when the largest gift I'm aware of is $750,000. And I'm not a math major, nor do I teach it, but spending 4 times that amount to get a gift of $750,000, I don't understand.
Well, I am a math major. But again, we are a financial task force to provide the overall picture and to all of the organizations to provide the best path forward. I cannot substantiate the source from each entity other than as we have indicated here. These are aggregated amounts over a period of time.
Okay, the PKT Housing Fund, $450,000, which as I understand it was sort of like a non-documented subsidy of operating expenses. That's for loans for chapter houses for smaller projects, and there was a cap that's been ignored. Again, do we have any understanding of how the loan fund authorized $450,000?
Again, we are a financial task force, not a judicial task force. We looked at the financial task force, the financial transactions in a different light than how you are asking the questions.
I understand you were trying to find the money and figure out where things needed to be paid. Old Main Holdings is a separate corporate entity. How are we making further loans, as I understand it, that was either the Mayor June Council meeting, a recommendation for further capital from Old Main Holdings to this transaction?
The Old Main Holdings will be addressed by Brother Nelson in his report as to where we are from there. But again, as a national council, we requested that the loan be made. And again, we're as a joint task force.
And Brother Maddox, this question to you as the vice chair of the foundation. I've asked this question of you previously. There's been a few months in between, so I'm trying to understand a foundation that's in the education support business and programs of the fraternity in that area, and I've been told for 40 plus years, cannot use money from the foundation for housing unless it goes directly to the educational component of a house, a library, a computer room. Is there a $1.2 million computer room at the Kappa House?
That's a good question, Bill, and you are correct in that there are stipulations put on where that money goes. It's based on a percentage of square footage.
Get closer to the mic, Warren.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I was going to say that what I can do, Bill, is I can refer that back to the foundation. Your question is valid. There are stipulations around how much can be given in the way of an educational requirement. And I will be able to get back to you if that's okay.
It's okay, but I asked you that question in April, and essentially you gave me the same answer. So I hope maybe a little tighter while we're still in session as a convention, you could give some clarity to that. And I'll close it out because no other people may have questions with saying, I know that the gentleman we're speaking right now didn't dig the hole that we're in. You're trying to dig us out of it. I get that. But in terms of accountability, I think transparency is due to these delegates, graduate and undergraduates, of how we got to this position of one chapter's house and 2.3. The chapter that I'm in, we were the first borrower of the loan fund. It was $35,000. The repayment schedule was 5 years. We repaid it early. In our chapter now has $3.7 million in the bank. We're not going to ask you for anything. So I could spend the rest of the day telling you about the chapter not being happy that we don't have a house right now. We'll get there. But we're not asking for fraternity support or headquarters support or foundation support. So I would leave y'all with this thought. Alexander Solzhenitsyn is a well-known Soviet dissident and author who spent a good bit of his life in prison in Russia before he got out, won the Nobel Peace Prize for Literature in 1980. And when asked about how he felt about never being able to go back to his home country of Russia for fear of being killed, he was trying to explain kind of the disconnect he felt for his home nation and country. And he said, of his government, not his people, they lie to us. We know they lie to us. They know, we know they're lying to us. And they still lie to us. Thank you for your time.
For what purpose of this gentleman's seek recognition?
Discussion, question?
Give us your name, chapter.
Jeff Weintraub, Delta Tau, Kappa, Vermont. Maybe a point of clarification or a point of inquiry. The foundation gave 1.02 million and there were no agreements in place, is that correct? But there were no written documents what 1.2 million was to be designated for?
In response to your question, much, as we had pointed out, a lot of transactions, verbal, some written, some not written, those were done by people who are not in office anymore. And I don't want to use this forum as a judicial review of what happened. Our task was to do a financial review. We can find that for you and provide it if that would help you with the clarity. And to speak to Brother Crane's comment about his reference of lying, I take offense to that, Bill. We never, as a foundation or fraternity, purposely withheld any truth. Okay?
Gentlemen, is your question sufficiently answered?
Yes, just that there was a characterization that this was a gift, but it was also discussed as it was a loan. Was it a loan or was it a gift, based on your understanding?
A significant amount was brought forward by a donor. And from that point, we were working to secure funding to complete the request that we needed from the bank to move forward with construction.
Okay, so if out of the funds that were, I guess, considered loans, there'd be an associated interest rate with that. Is the scope of outside counsel's retainer or what they're supposed to be advising us on in this real estate transaction, will we also incur fees for the tax implications of what any income is recognized from the interest rate on the loan that's still being paid back?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, so,
I don't know. I wasn't involved in there.
okay, so if, you know, possibly there is any fee incurred from counsel on a tax basis, or the question of what, you know.
I don't know, Jack.
Okay,
He's inquiring of them.
okay, yeah, no, my answer was question by the gentleman here, so, thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Hold on, Brother Toby, we're over here and then you're next. For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition? State your name and chapter.
Kevin Prather, Beta Gamma, University of Idaho. Point of inquiry. Did the committee review all of the transactions in the full light of IRS publication 526? And all of its stipulations? The second part of that question is, were donor letters issued to the donor that gave a substantial gift to the foundation that then got turned around and loaned for housing? Gentlemen, we have to get full accountability on all these issues. We run the serious risk of, and I know this council been advised, but there's different legal opinions on this all day long. We need to get to the bottom of that. If donor letters were issued, what was the expectation of the donor? So all these types of things need to be figured out. I don't know. I know based off of what you guys just said that you didn't look at it that way, and I totally get it. But somebody a little bit more articulate than I should propose a motion to take a hard look at this. We need the accountability. It has to happen. There are serious risks that these activities put the fraternity in. That's my inquiry. Has that been looked at?
I'll defer to these gentlemen here, but first of all, we will have time for new business later on if you want to construct said motion. Councilman French or Mr. Mathis, can you answer anything as to the donor letters and the 527 status?
I cannot address the donor letters. However, in our work with our general counsel and the way that the new set of documents is put together for each of the entities, one of Art Hogues, who is our general counsel, one of his associates, who is well-versed in commercial real estate transactions, put this set of documents together for compliance reasons. So we are following the legal advice that this body pays for. So that is the basis. That is the basis of the legal opinions that we're operating under.
I'll allow Brother Prather one more follow-up.
But the key issue is the donor letter. We're a donor letter issued by the foundation for housing.
I'm going to defer that question to Charlie Ball. Can you come up, Charlie?
State your name, assume the position.
Charlie Ball, Alpha Chapter, Miami University. The donor who made contributions to the foundation was receipted exactly like any other donor who made a contribution to a housing fund, to a CEG, to any other fund at the foundation. This was no different than any other gift to the foundation. And that money was granted back to the House Corporation for educational purposes, which, just to follow up on that question which raised, the architect for the project, in consultation with legal counsel, determined that the total educational percentage of the construction of that project was about 30%, about 29%. In addition to that, the foundation may grant money for certain other projects, including 100% grants for other projects, including life safety, the sprinkler system in the house, the internet infrastructure, and also that same percentage of operating expenses every year. So the foundation has not, at the level of funding that has been granted so far, exceeded the educational percentage determined by legal counsel and architect for that chapter house.
Thank you. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
Question. Bob Toby, Beta Zeta, New Mexico State University. So the purpose, just for me, the purpose of this task force was that we redid the paperwork to protect ourselves. Is that the thing? And we got this thing buttoned up. That's the whole thing. Okay, nice job. As far as donations go, everybody, if you say you're going to give some money, give the money. Write the check. You know, fast pay makes fast friends.
You want back over here. For what purpose does this gentleman rise? State your name and chapter.
Bill Christensen, Gamma Omicron, California State University, Fullerton. As a past high-risk commercial banker downtown Los Angeles, if I hear things like this, that loans aren't documented, makes me think other loans aren't documented. So I would suggest that you inquire about other loans. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
Inquiry, David Dean, Beta Phi, Westminster College. From the report, it sounds like many of these transactions were very nebulous, and so it sounds perhaps like things are hard to track or pinpoint. But I'm curious if at any point in investigating this, it was considered that anyone making these agreements or authorizing these transactions had acted ultra vires, and if any individual liability had been considered to be assessed in this situation.
And I very much appreciate your question. And in fact, that was a discussion that Brother Holland and I had with our counsel, Art Hogue. And I was always operating under the direction that should I get the sense that anything nefarious was going on, I could raise my hand and change the direction of the task force almost immediately. So that was discussed, and it was not an avenue that we felt was needed at this time. And not only was it our opinion, it was also the opinion of our auditors as well as our legal counsel. So please understand that the contents of this report has been reviewed by many professionals, does not represent opinion or conjecture. There's a reason Brother Maddox and I read it together as a joint task force. So the people who are behind the report, more than just myself, you saw the members of the task force. Quite frankly, I'm still taking offense that it's considered lies and conjectures, because that is just not the case. And I want to make sure the reason that we are doing this, that we presented as we did, is to give this body the assurance that what has happened in the past will not continue forward.
Is the gentleman's question sufficiently answered? I'll allow you one follow-up.
All right, a point of clarification, my question wasn't directed at any lack of transparency, or I was not suggesting that the committee reporting presently is attempting to hide or cover anything up or doing anything untowards. But it sounds like the practices and the accounting that you had to work with was not very forthcoming or in order. And so that's, my question was more directed towards the person or people in charge of that during the relevant time period, not the committee reviewing it. So my follow-up would be, and I get from what you're saying now that you're trying to move things forward and sort of get past the danger zone with this, but is there going to be any further or continued or secondary review of what had happened to figure out all of these missing pieces?
Upon the execution of the loan documents as put forth, the Kappa Joint Task Force on the Kappa housing matter will be disbanded.
Thank you.
Thank you. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
I'd just like to say that I appreciate
State your name and chapter.
Jimmy Johnson, Arizona State University, Zeta Omicron. I'd like to thank Brother French and Brother Maddox for their hard work. And I got to tell you, we've been tripped up on a lot of things from what I'm seeing. I'd like to see us move on. I think that they've delivered a report, and we're just scrutinizing it at this point. That's my personal opinion, so I'm going to defer the floor.
For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
Point of information and a point of inquiry. Sasha Konevsky, Epsilon Kappa, Rutgers University. Gentlemen, I don't want to be the rule stickler here, but the only people that have floor privileges are those that are credentialed. You are either the graduate delegate or the undergraduate delegate, past national president or national counselor. Those are the only people that have the right to speak on the floor. If you are not one of the delegates, please do not come to the microphone. And if you have a question about credentials, please come see me. Secondly, we received the minutes from the council meetings. Can we see the foundation trustee minutes as well, Brother Nelson, from Old Main Holdings as well at some point before the end of the convention?
Let's get in position for that in just a second, and we'll come back to that. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
On a personal privilege, I'll be brief. Michael Warren, I did not call either.
State your name,
Bill
assume the
Crane,
position.
sorry, Bill Crane, Beta Z Chapter, University of Georgia, former national president. I did not, I was very precise in my wording, as you were in your report. I didn't call either of you individually or the committee liars. I think the work you've done is yeoman. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. I stood up on this floor 2 years ago in Oxford, Ohio, and suggested a vote of no confidence in our CEO. Many on both boards and the committee you served on have thanked me for that motion, though it didn't pass this floor. Sometimes we have to have difficult discussions when we're talking about the self-governance of a modest nonprofit and putting so many eggs in any one basket. And if I offended you personally, you have my apology. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brother Crane. For what purpose does the gentleman rise, Brother Maddox?
Warren Maddox, Epsilon Chapter, Nebraska, Westland. Thank you, Bill. I accept your apology.
For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
My French, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
Michael Lukens, Alpha Pi, University of Washington. One remaining question. With all the work that you've done, and again, I want to recognize the work that you have done to minimize our liability. Worst case scenario, what is the financial implication for the foundation for Old Main Holdings for the fraternity?
To us, the worst case scenario, the chapter closes, we sell the house, And once we get the agreements in place, we will have the equity in the house. So, there is that final backstop. And as I told the Kappa Housing Corp, it is my desire for us to have a Kappa chapter of well over 150 men for the next however many decades that it would take. So all of this is done in support of the Kappa.
Michael Lukens, Alpha Pi again, move to accept the report.
John Hayes, Old Dominion, Gamatog, National Counselor. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the report. I think there's any discussion there. All those for, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Now, before we move to the next report, Mr. Konveski, if you will come back up and make that inquiry, we'll get you lined up.
Sasha Knefsky, Epsilon Kappa, Rutgers University. Can we please see the minutes from the foundation trustee as well as Old Main Holdings for all of these meetings that were held?
Question is, can we see the meeting minutes for all these meetings that were held?
Yes, anything involving the capital loans and the approvals and how each member voted.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we do that, Matt, but we need to make them available within a week of convention.
I don't have authority over foundation minutes or refer that to the foundation.
Yeah, we can do that for the council, but we do not, Matt does not have the authority for the foundation minutes, so, and there's no one, their CEO or chairman is not here, but you'll have to make that inquiry with them.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
you. All right, proceeding on, next officer's report as appointed by President Dale Holland 2 months ago, chairman of Old Main Holdings, past national president, Stephen Nelson. Stephen, come on down. And
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Steve Nelson. Many of you know me, Steve M. Nelson, former national president. Have been watching patiently through the years after my term, and I was recently tasked by the current national president, Dale Holland, to do a deep dive discovery into Old Main Holdings. And before I get into that, I want you to know that I have already presented a 41-page report that I found to the National Council. But I want to give you very shortly, I didn't want to read a 41-page report, but I want to give you an outline, but I want to make you understand just a little bit about Old Main Holdings, because many of you, this is your first time to ever hear that. But taking you back to the 90s, before all of you were born, in the 90s, we had PKT Properties, by Capital Properties. We were never, ever in the housing business. That's a different subject. But due to some failed housing, the National Fraternity was charged with trying to salvage some chapter houses and keep the chapters from losing the equity in those houses. So through the years, PKT Properties ended up assuming about 5 chapter houses. They weren't performing loans. The National Fraternity did not have the funds to pay the notes and mortgages on those houses, and the chapters were non-performing. Brother Rick Keltner was the first chairman of PKT Properties, and his charge under President Jay McCann was to dissolve PKT Properties liabilities. So he did, one house by one house. Phi Kappa Tau Properties got out of the housing business very successfully. We sold the last property in 1995 was sold back to Beta Kappa at the University of Oklahoma State. And that success story is heralded here today. What a fine chapter, what a fine chapter house they have, and what a fine house corporation that took over that responsibility and rebuilt their house. So the fraternity got out of the housing business. PKT Properties is still an entity that existed. In 1995, at convention, the undergraduates sitting where you sit now requested the fraternity provide some sort of support for their housing, not finance their housing, but give them money for a roof repair, not give them loan them money for a roof repair. Because if Alpha Chapter went to the local bank and said, hey, we need to borrow $25,000, put a new roof on, the bank would have just laughed them right back out. So they needed an alternative source for air conditioning, for roofing, for furniture, FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Listening to the undergrads and their request of help in chapter housing, repairs, maintenance, etc., the undergrads in 1995 at convention passed a motion to create the Housing and Loan Fund, which they would fund out of their dues. I think it was initially $10. That fund was socked away for years and years with some strong structure to loan that money back to the chapter houses. I sat on one of the first committees under Brother Keltner with a housing and loan fund in the late 1990s. That's how far back I go with this. So that was the Housing and Loan Fund. It was not a corporation, an LLC. It was a sub-entity of Phi Kappa Tau, whereby we would take your $10, put it in a separate fund and designate that for nothing but loans to chapters. And we had limits on your loans. In those days, it was $25,000. That's all we could loan. But that was a lot of money back then. The loan grew, the fund grew. We stewarded the money well in the Housing and Loan Fund. We stewarded through the years. We made good loans, all with notes, promissory notes, repayable, low interest. We met the chapter's need for the repayment terms, and we did what the undergrads wanted to do with the Housing and Loan Fund. In 2006, Phi Kappa Tau suffered tremendous tragedy at Nebraska Wesleyan University with the death of one of our brothers in a terrible, tragic fire mishap. In 2007, Phi Kappa Tau suffered another death at Rider University. So that's why you have a lot of alcohol and education programming. That's why you have a lot of liability programming. To this day, that's why we pay, or you young men pay liability insurance into a fund, because of those tragedies. In 2008, those tragedies placed Phi Kappa Tau in court with the possibility of losing everything if we were to lose lawsuits based on those deaths. Our CEO and we had an in-house attorney, Art Hogue, and we had another attorney that we paid as well, negotiated a settlement with the death in the fire. We went to court and never, fortunately, went to trial at Rider University. That was a much more expensive settlement that, thank goodness, through our insurance pool,
and our negotiated settlement and payout through the years, Phi Kappa Tau was able to settle a multi-million-dollar lawsuit there at the death of a hazing accusation, it's never proven, death from alcohol. During that time, it was recommended by our attorney that we had assets. The foundation was the holder of the national headquarters asset in case the lawsuit came after the building. We had this housing fund that was approaching $1 million. So we created Old Main Holdings Incorporated, and we transferred the money out of Phi Kappa Tau into Old Main Holdings Incorporated to protect your investment. So if we lost a major lawsuit, the only thing that was available to be grasped was the FF&E within the national headquarters, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We were willing to give that up to save the foundation's name building of the fraternity and the fund, which comprised the bulk of our monetary balance. Old Main Holdings was created under the auspices of not one, not two, but 3 different attorneys who had dealt with lawsuits, who had dealt with libelous lawsuits, and recommended this is what worked for them in other national fraternity situations. So we created Old Main Holdings with a separate arm's length away from Phi Kappa Tau. It had to be that way. The chairman of Old Main Holdings, the only tie was the chairman of Old Main Holdings was appointed by the national president. So during 2008 to 2010, we settled all our lawsuits. And in 2012, I was national president then. I was able to transfer shy of $1 million into a new account of Old Main Holdings and make the first appointment for the first chairman of Old Main Holdings. So you need to know where and why Old Main Holdings actually evolved out of a housing and loan fund. And the purpose of Old Main Holdings was the continuance of a housing and loan fund to loan monies back to the chapters at low interest rates based upon their fiscal plant needs within the fraternity, within their campus. At that time, we had strict guidelines for lending. We felt like if we had $1 million in the bank to lend to chapters, we couldn't lend more than $50,000 to maybe $75,000 to one chapter, because we wanted, this was the fraternity's money, we wanted to be able to loan a lot of chapters a lot of little money rather than one chapter a lot of money. And that was the precipice by which we built the criteria for funding small loan requests at Old Main Holdings. That continued through the years, but as the loan amount of Old Main Holdings grew over $1 million, over $1.1 million, also did the limits by which they would loan money. Fast forward to where we are today, Old Main Holdings was under the purview of the CEO. He had authorization as the keeper of Old Main Holdings Fund. He had access to that. And Old Main Holdings had a committee with a chairman that was to oversee those funds. We have not received a report from Old Main Holdings. And when I left in 2014, we had a audited financial statement from an independent CPA firm of Old Main Main Holdings and our financial assets and our outstanding loans and who they were to. In 2016, we had a financial report from Main Holdings audited by a CPA firm of the financial results and who received monies and how much money we had left in the bank. As Brother Mike Davila presented, he had a financial report that he presented when he was national president of Old Main Holdings. That was 5 years ago. So we have no financial reports for Old Main Holdings in 5 years. So the wisdom of the current National Council and the National President realizing that, hey, where's our money? How much do we have in Old Main Holdings? How many loans are outstanding? Who's paying back their loans? And where do we stand? No one could give the National President those answers. No one was willing to give the National President and National Council who were requesting that information answers. So our National President dissolved upon his request the Standing Committee of Old Main Holdings. He asked for minutes, Brother French. Your council asked for minutes. He asked for promissory notes. Your council asked for promissory notes, and nothing was furnished to support that. So our National President contacted me and he said, I need someone that will dig deep without us having to hire a forensic accounting firm and see what you can find on Old Main Holdings, how much money we have, where'd the money go, what's the balances, what's it used for, who's paying their loans back, where are the promissory notes, where are the deeds of trust, where are the minutes of the meeting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he said, Brother Nelson, would you dig into this? This was 8 weeks ago. Would you dig deep and see what you can find to protect the brotherhood for the good of the order? He said, I know you have no ties to any of them, and you're familiar with housing, having built 3 fraternity houses and having financed them within Fatah. I said, absolutely, because that's my legacy too as a national president. When I turned over $1 million to the next national president, who turned that over to the next national president, we were proud of that. We were proud that our Old Main Holdings Fund was growing. It was supporting our chapters, and our insurance fund was growing where we could self-insure. That's not what we are today. So in lieu of total transparency, I'd like to present what I discovered in the past 8 weeks. You'll see on the Housing and Loan Fund created by you undergrads in '95, grew over the years, and strategic decision to create it due to the death. My transfer of $1 million into Old Main Holdings in 2012 and the housing support. Currently, I am the interim chairman, digging deep into Old Main Holdings. I have one member, Jack Zinn, vice chairman. Jack has asked for years of his own committee for this information. And he's a committee member of the former Old Main Holdings committee, and no one would ever provide him the information. Alan Shaw. Alan is a representative of the National Council. The National Council's digging deep, trying to find out and trying to oversee what I was able to find. Rob Reese is a trustee on the foundation. The foundation is digging deep. They want to be kept informed in total transparency as to what I found, as is our new CEO, Matt Arnold, who has spent not weeks, but months digging through 10 years of emails trying to trace what happened with the transactions of Old Main Holdings. So this is what I have discovered in the last 8 weeks, and this is what our CEO has discovered in emails. What we didn't discover is what many of you are asking for. We did not discover minutes. We did not discover anything documented. We did not discover promissory notes properly executed. We did not discover deeds of trust. We don't know that they don't exist, but there should have been a file on every loan made, and it should have started with the application, because many a time a chapter will ask to borrow money, and on the application they're not eligible. They don't meet the criteria. We didn't have an application on file for not one of our 5 loans. But what we have discovered and found is we have $326,680 in the bank. We have funds being held from the fraternity of $45,000 of collected Old Main Holding funds that has not been transferred to Old Main Holdings for the last 2 semesters. The $45,000 is your $10 initially.
Out of order, let him complete his report.
The $45,000 that's due to Old Main Holdings is your undergraduate housing dues that you pay per semester. And it's accumulated to be $45,000 that's in the fraternity's treasury that should be transferred to Old Main Holdings. To the credit of the National Council and to the National President, stewarding your money, wait a minute, we're not going to transfer anything until we find out the status of Old Main Holdings and where the money's at. So we have $45,000 to be transferred into Old Main Holdings. We have total loans outstanding as of June 30th, 2023. So my report was issued on June 30th of this year, 39 pages. And I'm not going to read you the balances, but these are the 6 outstanding loans to 6 chapters totaling $1,339,389. So if you total all that together, Old Main Holdings cash and outstanding accounts receivable is a little over $1.4 million. So I was asked a lot of pointed questions through this discovery, and the problem is not Old Main Holdings. The problem is not the structure we had in place. The problem is those that didn't do their job administering this loan and wasn't accountable with transparency and documentation for every penny that was put out. I'm not questioning the decisions as to loan monies to a chapter. That's not what my purview was. That's not what my charge was I'm questioning why wasn't it done starting with an application, approval, minutes from Old Main Holdings board meeting, and then before the funds were transferred, why wasn't there promissory notes, deeds of trust, et cetera, put into place as with a normal commercial loan? So what has happened in the last 8 weeks, we've had a chairman change of Old Main Holdings. The entire board has been dissolved, and we were in operational cleanup. I'm not done, but I'm just getting started. So we still think is our best estimation that the monies were mismanaged. They weren't, there was no criminal activity as yet. That's the best I can put it. We need to restructure with checks and balances, every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out. I also discovered that the national fraternity that receives a 1 to 1.5% administration fee for overseeing the money has never gotten paid. So, Old Main Holdings should have written a check for the activities, for the monies that transferred back and forth, for the national fraternity CEO doing what he was supposed to be doing. So what we discovered also is Old Main Holdings board went above and beyond their original charge in their funding these 6 chapters. Staying within the 10% rule, if we had $1 million in the bank, then the most we could loan to a chapter, if it had risen to 10%, was $100,000. If we had $1.5 million in assets, the most we could loan to a chapter would be $150,000. As you can see on the previous page, we did not follow our own guidelines. So with that being said, short of an audit, I think we have discovered everything, and we're still looking. Brother Crane?
Point of inquiry, Bill Craig.
That's all I have right now, unless someone would like I have 39 pages, if you'd like to see some details into the minutes I found. Okay.
Thank you, Brother Nelson. I would say it would be good for folks to have copies of the report as well as the Kappa report, and perhaps some should have even been printed. So I think when we don't provide these documents correctly, we're shortchanging the delegates here. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
Point of inquiry on Brother President Nelson's report. And again, as I said to the Kappa committee, I commend you for stepping into the breach in the last 8 weeks and digging up all of this information. But I did have a couple of questions on the slides he shared with us. If the back could pull up the portfolio of loans that are currently outstanding. 2 quick questions.
Logan, can you pull back up the portfolio and the balances on the screen? Thank you.
It is my understanding that only one of those loans is currently making payments. If that's incorrect, perhaps CEO Arnold would want to step in, but those are the loans. How many of them are current, meaning how many of those chapters who have loans outstanding are currently making payments back to Old Main Holdings?
I can answer that.
You got it? Okay.
In our discovery, we learned that there was, at that point in time, only one chapter paying interest only. We have since converted that to principal and interest again. Ohio State has moved back to interest only for a small period of 6 months. And we are working on finalizing the other ones back to principal and interest.
And just point of clarification, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Nelson, the original loans were for a period of 5 years, correct? The original Old Main and property loans.
Yes, the original design of Old Main Holdings was a 5-year limit with a cap based on a percentage of how much money was in the housing loan.
And the Kappa loan is still be repaid over 25 years. I'll be dead. And what what are the terms roughly on the other loans in the portfolio, years wise? How many more of us will be dead?
No, I didn't see any long-term loans. For
They're all
example,
5 years?
They're all 5 years. I'll give a Gamma's, I know for a fact that Gamma borrowed 375 or 400, they paid it down to 150. And they just asked for a 6-month interest-only reprieve till Rush came and they were able to start making P&Is beginning January of 2024. They are still on target for finishing their large loan early.
Logan, could you pull the slide back up again? And just one last question, I'll shut up and sit down. The $45,000 that's been paid in, and the last year's spring was paid over to Old Main, would the floor be before new business able, or would you consider entertaining a motion to suspend and hold that 45, any additional that's collected in the fall, until Brother Nelson has completed his work in determining the status of all the loans?
Well, let's get into that posture after the inquiry is finished on the current status of the outstanding loans. And we also have I don't even know if we're gonna have time for that business, but that can come up at any time. I don't think I want to refer this to jurisprudence. It's a different issue. Are there any other questions or any other motions or anything? For what purpose does the gentleman run? State your name and chapter.
Brother President, I'd like to have a point of inquiry, Georgia Tech, Alpha Rho. I just have a few questions in the interest of the undergrads here, just so everybody kind of understands what's going on. I see a line forming behind me as well. I don't really know who's the right person to ask. Hopefully, maybe you can answer, but what exactly is the purpose? Each chapter is assessed a $7.50 due per man per semester charge. What is the purpose of that charge? It says it goes to housing fund dues.
Yep, that goes into Old Main Holdings. That was voted upon 12, 13 years ago, as Brother Nelson reiterated. So that is shown on your bill as a $7.50 charge.
Okay.
Per man.
And per semester, okay. So, and what exactly is that money allowed to be used for from that fund?
It is put into this corpus, which you see up on the screen. Can we bring that back up on the screen, Logan? You see the funds held there, that 45,000. That represents fall 22 semester, which is about half of it, 22.5, and spring 23. That is the total for 1 year of the $750 per man charge, and the council asked that that be held until we sort this out.
And that money is supposed to be used for educational?
No, that goes into Old Main Holdings.
Okay, okay, understand. And what is the max amount of money that was supposed to be allowed to each chapter from that fund?
Well, you have to apply for a loan for Old Main Holdings, and as Steve said, the original intent was to just limit it to 50% or 50,000 or 10% of the loan inquiry. And later on, when others got in charge of Old Main Holdings, you've seen the subsequent loans that were made.
Okay, so just so I am absolutely clear, and all the undergraduates here are also absolutely clear on this matter, that $7.50 per man per semester charge has been funded for the past 13 years, or this has been happening for a while now. This is what's funding, in part, these loans up here that have been assessed to these chapters.
That is correct.
Largely. Okay,
That is
these significant loans. All right, and it could be argued, and maybe this is just my opinion, but I feel like it's the opinion of others as well, that these funds have been misused, misappropriated, and unfairly handled, rather. Okay.
Well, I'm not sure that's in order, but if you have another inquiry or anything else, you need to go ahead and state.
All right. I just wanted to make the connection for everybody here that it's our money that we've been paying for the past few years that has funded this. Thank you.
Thank you. what purpose does the gentleman rise? State your name and chapter.
Patrick Huntington, Alpha Road Chapter at Georgia Tech. I propose a motion that follows what Mr. Greedy said. My motion to end the $7.50 charge per man per semester assessment, allow the fraternity to retain those funds and issue credits to chapters for their respective fall 2022 per man assessment on their fall 2023 billing, and issue credits to the chapter for their spring 2023 per man assessment on their spring 2024.
Why is that on? We hadn't been in new business for the past day and a half, and we've been taking motions. I'm not sending that the delegate's request. The gentleman got a motion. So if we want to bring it up in new business, we can, so. Restate your motion.
I motion to suspend the $7.50 per man per semester charge on each chapter and credit the $7.50 per man per semester for the fall 2023 and again for spring 2024.
The respective amounts paid this past year?
Correct.
As a credit? All right. It's been motioned that the $7.50 per man assessment be eliminated and the fall billing reflect a credit of the fall 2022 billing and the spring 24 billing reflect a credit of the 2023 billing. Yes, sir. The gentleman from Georgia Tech, can you take that language to Logan at the back chair back there, if you have it, please? For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
Jaden Absher, Beta Kappa, Oklahoma State. I wanted to second his motion.
Second the motion. All right. So a motion and a second to eliminate the $7.50 per man fee, credit the fall 2023 billing from the respective fall 2022 billing, credit the spring 24 billing with the respective spring 2023 billing amount from those chapters. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Michael French, Beta Mu, Kent State. Point of order, I would ask that we suspend the current motion so that we can accept the report from Old Maid Holdings from Brother Nelson. At this time, I so move to accept the report of Old Maid Holdings so we can move forward then with the business.
All right, let me get the proper posture. If the report doesn't call for action, it didn't technically need to be accepted. So, and there is no action. Thank you.
I withdraw my comment.
All right. Any further discussion? Yes, sir. State your name.
John Hayes, Old Dominion, Cape National Council. The only thing that I think we may want to do to clean up the financing on this a little bit easier is to take the entire balance that's due and credit it in the fall. Don't split it across 2 semesters. Give it back to them immediately and so kill the $750. The fall billing, they get the credit for that $45,000.
For both semesters?
Both semesters right then up front, rather than trying to spread it across 2 semesters and it doesn't look as clean on a financial report of what we're doing. Okay. So we can look back and say, for last year, you had, that's the motion. I'm speaking, please.
You're in good posture. Go ahead.
Basically, go back, figure out what each chapter paid, and come right into the fall billing and hand it back to them.
Okay.
So that we're not working it. So that would be a suggestion. I believe that's a cleaner way to do it, and I would hope that the delegates that would accept that.
Would you accept that as an amendment to the main motion?
That's what I'm asking for.
All right. Do we have a second? Over here. Or what do we do?
If the maker will accept that.
Maker, Mr. Grieve, I believe it is. Will you accept the amendment?
I'm so sorry.
That is it. Are we still in discussion?
Hold on. Come up and agree to the amendment. Is it practical? Hold on. Brother Huntington, Brother Hayes has amended your motion to just make it a flat total credit in fall for both semesters. Would you accept the amendment?
I accept.
Thank you. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
I was just gonna second it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Again, please state your name. Anyone else? Any further discussion? All right.
Point of order, Brother
Yes, sir,
President.
Brother
Could you
Nelson.
clarify this motion?
Sure.
Into is this permanent or is this just for the 45,000 that's being held by the executive
Well,
office?
I think you have two different things. I would assume the $750 per man assessment is permanent. So if that's permanent, it's not gonna replace the corpus, and then you've got the 45,000 that will be reissued as a credit, totally in the fall billing for both semesters.
I agree, it's an undergraduate's money, but I just want to point out, this is not 13 years, this is 25 years.
I know.
And if they quit funding their own, we will never be able to do any legitimate loans to help chapters. Now, that's their call.
I can, but if I could respond,
Yes,
you have 1.02 million in outstanding loans.
yes.
Those are expected to perform, hopefully, and replenish the fund.
But if we were ever going to be the national fraternity we wanted to be, that would grow a fund to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million, where we could get into providing loans to build fraternity houses, providing down payments to build fraternity houses. This was our vehicle to do that.
I would agree. So it's up to the body, and the sense is, and maybe others that are sort of done with this. For what purpose is the gentleman rise?
Point of discussion, Kevin Prather, Beta Gamma, University of Idaho. I am a housing court member. I'm financially responsible for our chapter house. Consistently, we floated somewhere in the area of about $350,000 in and out of that chapter house to keep it going. It's a 110, 115-year-old structure. I would tell everybody in this room that if you cut off the funding on the fraternity will go backwards. We've got housing that we have to replenish. We need to stop thinking small ball here. What we're really reacting to is a whole lot of things that just don't feel good. Nobody's saying that there is ill intent behind any of this, but I think going forward, we can understand the imperative that we have clear accountability at all levels within the organization. So what I would do is I would consider for each undergraduate, graduate council member in this room to really look at the future and decide what fraternity you want really to be in the future. If we don't all financially support housing on campuses, you won't be on those campuses. And that isn't always the case in every college or university. It certainly is for a large percentage of them. So I think while I understand the reaction to it, I do think it is a bad move, and I'm very much against cutting this funding off. Thank you.
Thank you. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
JJ Lewis, Gamma Lambda Central Michigan University Go Fire Chips. I move to lay the motion on the table.
Motion's been moved to lay the motion on the table.
Michael Liggins, Alpha Pi, Washington, second.
To a second, not debatable. Not debatable. All those for, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Shows hand. That's not my ruling. All those for, please raise your hand. We're tabling. All those against? Ayes have it, motion is taken. All right. Next up, officers report, Warren Maddox, Phi Kappa Foundation. Come on up, Warren.
Thank you, Barry. In lieu of time, I'll make this fairly brief. I'm here to represent the foundation. What I would like to do first of all is introduce those that are here in person. Chairman Jeff Hilpertz was unable to attend, so you'll be seeing his report via video in a few minutes. Doug Adams, Vice Chairman of the foundation, is also unable to attend. With us, however, is Rob Reese, the treasurer. Rob, there you go. John Sayers, his secretary, he's in the back of the room. Next to him, clapping, is Jack Albanus. Stephen Martino, where are you, Stephen? There's Stephen. And our two newest members, J.J. Lewis and Mr. David Lipinski. There he is. Okay, thank you. What I'll do now is I'll just go ahead and, Logan, if you could start the video. Okay. So Jeff will be coming up on the videos shortly.
Hello, brothers and guests. My name is Jeff Hilpertz, and I'm a 1995 initiate of the Gamma Upsilon chapter at Spring Hill College. I have the great honor of serving as the chairman of the Phi Kappa Tau Foundation, the charitable arm of our fraternity, solely dedicated to generating financial support to further the mission of the Phi Kappa Tau fraternity. I regret that I cannot be with you in person today, but long-standing work commitments have me in New York City this week. However, I am grateful for the opportunity to present the fundraising results for our foundation during the fiscal year 2023, which concluded on June 30th. It is important to note that these results are not yet final, as some gifts are still being processed as we close out the books for the year. So the totals will likely increase in the days to come. As the foundation board chair, I am delighted to share these accomplishments and express my gratitude to each and every one of you for your support. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to talk with this group about our results compared to our goals for the year. Let's start by celebrating the extraordinary efforts of our team in achieving our dollars raised, arguably the most important metric we track. Our goal for fiscal year 2023 was set ambitiously at $375,000. I am beyond thrilled to announce that we exceeded this goal by a significant margin. Thanks to you, the foundation received a remarkable $1,140,137 in philanthropic receipts, making this one of our most productive years ever. Moreover, this is the second consecutive year where our attainment has more than doubled our goal and nearly tripled our fundraising average for the last 5 years. Moving on to the total number of donors, our goal was to reach 1,000 contributors. I am also pleased to share that we surpassed this goal with a total of 1,097 donors. This achievement is particularly notable considering the national trend of declining donor counts for organizations like ours and colleges and universities. We have defied this trend and joined the rare company of organizations that are gaining donors instead of losing them. Building new relationships and expanding our donor base is crucial for our foundation's success and our ability to support the mission of the Phi Kappa Tau fraternity. We aimed in fiscal year 23 to acquire 250 new donors, and I am thrilled to announce that we exceeded this goal as well, gaining a total of 313 donors. Our success in attracting new donors can be attributed to a number of factors, not the least of which was the remarkable efforts of each of you and our many volunteers across the country for our Founders Day of Giving in March, which enabled us to connect with more than 300 new donors. Bucking a national trend again, we were grateful to each and every one of the donors that made this possible. While we experienced great success in attracting new donors, our results in increasing support from existing donors fell slightly below our goal. We aimed to elevate 225 donors to a new, higher level of support, but we were able to achieve this with only 185 donors. Realizing this gap, we will focus on encouraging our loyal donors to increase their level of support in the coming year. I would also like to take a moment to express my sincere appreciation to our Bowls donors, our most loyal and generous benefactors, contributing at least $1,000 a year to the foundation. With a goal of 150 donors this year, we reached a total of 130, showcasing significant growth over the past 3 years. It is also the high watermark for our number of Bowls donors. I would argue that this is among our most important segments to grow if we wish to continue to see significant increased philanthropic support of the fraternity. To all of our Bowls donors who are in attendance today, thank you. On behalf of our foundation board, we appreciate your longstanding commitment and unwavering support. I am also excited to report that both the Foundation Board of Trustees and National Council members achieved a nearly perfect score in meeting our expectations for giving. Both groups achieved a 90% overall participation in donating to the foundation, showcasing their strong commitment to our mission. Our donor retention for the year was also impressive, with 61% exceeding our goal of 60%. This is a high percentage when compared to organizations nationally, and is a testament to the exceptional work we have done in maintaining strong relationships with our donors. It's an accomplishment that we should take just pride in, considering the national averages. We also benefited from the philanthropy of more than 100 non-members. These donors tend to be spouses, partners, and parents of our members. So for you undergraduate members in the audience today, thank you for encouraging your families to support our mission and the fraternity experience that you and so many other young men are receiving. Looking ahead, we are excited to welcome Craig Rogers as the new executive director of the foundation. With a career spent leading some of our nation's leading fundraising organizations, Craig will focus on increasing the level of giving in support of the mission of Phi Kappa Tau. Under his leadership, the foundation will see increased fundraising results, but also gain administrative stability and accountability, ensuring that we are effective stewards of our donors' funds. As we set our priorities for the coming year, we will build upon the incredible success of our Founders Day of Giving. Thanks to your collective efforts and the participation of over 600 donors, we raised a staggering $147,000, 3 times more than we had ever raised with a Day of Giving before. These gifts came from 88 chapters with an average donation of $240 per gift. More importantly, 64% of the gifts were designated for the Brotherhood Fund, and another 35% were allocated to chapter educational grant funds, directly benefiting our undergraduate members. As we reflect on the success of this effort, it is important to note that this year's Founders Day of Giving witnessed a 222% increase from our same efforts in fiscal year 22. We also had a 200% increase in donors, and the average gift increased by 30%. To say that it was a success is an understatement. Thank you to each of you who participated, and here's to an even bolder Day of Giving in March of 2024. In conclusion, fiscal year 23 has been a dynamic and successful one for our foundation. We have learned valuable lessons and recognized the need to professionalize our operations while remaining committed to being a great partner in support of our only mission, which is to expand and support the mission and activities of the Phi Kappa Tau fraternity. We have no other agenda or purpose. We support no other organizations other than the National Fraternity. And we are dedicated to serving this body effectively, ensuring that our undergraduate members reap the benefits of our fraternity and foundation. To all of our current donors, I express my heartfelt gratitude. Your continued support is invaluable. To those of you who are considering support of the fraternity through the foundation, I extend my sincere thanks. Your contribution will have a lasting impact. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you all the best as you embark upon the important work that is core to our national convention.
All right, we're going to, we got to get moving. We will come back. Here's what we're fixing to do. I'm gonna let Matt tell us where we're headed for the awards luncheon. We will come back and we will take any comments or questions on the foundation report. After Matt's finished, I'll recess us to the awards luncheon. Matt?
Well, after all of that work this morning, I bet you guys are hungry. Even more importantly, we've got to celebrate some great success and achievements in 2022. We want to make sure we get that done. So our awards banquet and luncheon is going to be held where we had the breakfast this morning. If you can escort yourself probably through the bathroom and then over to the luncheon and find a seat. We will start that program promptly so that we can enjoy some of the successes of 2022. Hold on, fellas. Hold on.
Chair would entertain a motion to recess to the awards luncheon. State your name. Thank you, Representative Thorpe. And so move to recess. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. State your name. Any name will do.
Michael French.
Thank you. All those for, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, nays, ayes have it. Yeah, I just have an announcement to make. This is under the fund. We got the Phi Kappa Tau Hold'em Poker Championship Charity Fundraiser. This is going to be tonight. Is that right, Rick? Tonight at the Westgate Hotel at the Poker Room. It's not far from here. 9 o'clock. Registration required. You need a Westgate player's card. Age 21 or older. The buy-in is $200. There'll be a $170 net. The Westgate will provide prizes to first, second, third place of $300, $200, and $100. Please arrive before 9 p.m. to register for player's card. Thank you, Carlos Iguchi, Betero, UCLA. Carlos, are you here? Rick Keltner, raise your hand too.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Thank you.